welcome to the Mind Like Books podcast. Joining me again is Paul. Thanks so much for being here. How are the cats?
Yeah, good. I'm happy to be on the one of the top charting podcasts in the Bahamas for books.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say too. They love us in
Yeah,
Bahamas.
no one else does, but yeah.
But also joining us today, a very needed and very unusual special guest, Kristyna. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine. Yeah,
Very needed
hi.
because we need more women on this podcast, both in
Yeah.
guests and audience.
Well, I will recommend it to all my students and all my friends.
Oh,
I've
thank you.
already bragged about being on a podcast to one of my friends.
Oh, awesome.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks. I wanted to say that you're also a special guest because you might be the most experienced person that's ever been on this podcast as far as books are concerned. Because not only is your job book translation, but I think you've read the most by far from any people on this podcast. And also, you write yourself, which you don't want to brag about, I'm sure. And you never say that you do, but I like your stuff. I've read your stuff and I think it was good.
I have not written anything in such a long time, and I forgot what I gave you to read, and now I'm afraid to ask because I couldn't have been older than like 16,
Yeah.
and that was
It was the first time we met, and we were talking about books, of course, and reading, writing, and languages, because we both like languages. You can speak many languages yourself. And I was like, yeah, I'd be very curious what you write about. And you were like, yeah, I wrote this, have it here. And I was like, okay. And I took it home, and I was like, this is gonna be
Really?
some shit. I have to go through this. And then I read it, and it was pretty good. I was very pleasantly
Okay.
surprised. So
Well, that's a blast from the past for
So
sure.
since then, every time I talk to Kristyna, well, not now, but I should start again, I tell her to write, please. So please, get on it. I would love to read more stuff.
Okay. Okay.
One last thing about the introduction, I wanted to quickly ask you because you've read The Iron Widow, which is a very unusual book that I'm very curious about. I kind of want to read. The Iron Widow you described is a Gundam kaiju monster fight, but combined with The Handmaid's Tale and being a very serious drama about womanhood. Is that what you say it was?
I don't know that it's that serious. I found it entertaining, but it's not.
Sounds bonkers to me.
Yeah, okay, the tagline is Handmaid's Tale or Handmaid's Tale meets Pacific
Yeah,
Rim,
that's
which I
already got
think
me.
is pretty accurate because it like takes aspects of both. Basically, in a Pacific Rim, it's all based on people being drift compatible, right? That's how they kind of do the whole in the giant robot thing. Here, that is very much not the case. It's based on the fact that the pilot is the guy, and he has brides.
Oh, even
And if a woman gets in like next to the seat with him, it's like, yeah, she'll probably die, right? And so you've got the main character whose name is, and I forgive my pronunciation, anybody listening who does actually speak Mandarin Chinese, Wu Zetian. That's her name after a Chinese empress, and she is pissed off because her sister's dead.
okay.
Her sister died as this bride of this pilot of they call them chrysalises, these giant mecha robot Jaeger things. And and she herself is kind of seen as lesser than by her family, her society. Her family are kind of, I don't know, patriarchal. Would that be a thing? And also, she's like an important part of who she is she's got those, I think they're called lotus feet.
Okay.
You know, when they broke women's feet and bound them.
Oh, foot binding was it?
Yeah. So she
Yeah.
cannot
Oh
walk
my
without
God.
being in extreme pain. And like that would make you angry, right?
That
So
would.
like at the start of the story,
I'd be a bit pissed about it, yeah.
she's just the right levels of pissed off, reckless, and determined / suicidal, and she decides to get revenge for her sister's death and kill the guy responsible for killing her. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that she succeeds in that, and the book is about what happens after, because she survives. I think usually when you have a revenge tale, it's all about getting the revenge, finally getting to kill the people who've wronged you. But here it's kind of, she succeeds, and then what happens?
I'm very intrigued. I kind of wanted to read this ever since I heard about it from you. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Well,
It sounds like it's impossible to not have this be schlock, and it somehow sounds like it's not schlock. I'm amazed.
it's not. It does a lot of things, I think, differently from what books of that genre usually do. And yeah, but it is like angry. For most of the story, the main character is angry because horrible things are happening to her.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
thank you for the teaser. I was very curious about this book ever since I saw the cover and heard about it. But on this episode, we're doing a very unusual book. I've never heard about the writer. I've never heard about any of this. And Kristyna said you might enjoy this, and this is why I enjoy doing this podcast. I would have never read this if you haven't told me. And it was a very unusual book, very surprisingly unusual. I'm very curious what you guys think. The book's name is Piranesi. And
Piranesi. You should say it correctly. We need Paolo on the show.
Yeah. The writer is Susanna Clarke,
It's a very difficult name to pronounce
whichever
in English.
way you pronounce it. I failed again. She's from England. So we'd like to talk about, as usual, the writer and what we think about the book, and then in the second half do the spoilers. Without getting too much into detail, what did you guys think about this book? I guess you should go first. You're the guest of honor.
Oh, I'm the guest of honor. Okay, I'll go first. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's one of my favorite books ever. Which, like, yeah, it's because at first when I began, I was like, why is all the everything capitalized, and why, all these different holes and stuff, and do I need to remember it? But then I got past that and kind of accepted the narrative style, and I love how it's like a mystery that is solved backwards, if that makes
Yeah.
sense at all. I really enjoyed it.
Sorry, that's an interesting point, actually, because I'm a very busy man, Philip, as you know. So I listened to the audiobook, and recently when I was just checking out some reviews, they talked about the capitalization in the book. And I didn't know that was a thing, because, of course, I'm listening to the audiobook.
I think that's very different.
Yeah,
About it.
so I think that might have actually kind of changed or had some kind of impact on the experience of the book, I guess.
I'll be in the middle, in between you today. I feel like I've done both. I've listened and read. I've been doing that recently. I keep walking to work and I listen, and then I'm on the train and I read, and I do it half and half. And this book works much better in the text form, I would think.
Probably would, yeah.
Yeah, I got that impression, actually, after checking out some of the reviews about it. Yeah.
Like you said, I didn't realize with the capitalization that actually, yeah, when you're listening to it, you wouldn't get that experience.
Not at all, no.
And it kind of shows what is important for, how are we pronouncing it? Piranesi? Yeah. It shows what's important for the narrator, because that's what he chooses to kind of focus on, and that's what he kind of makes into the important thing.
I'll be bluntly honest, I didn't notice the capitalization either, and I read a bunch. No, I did notice it, but I didn't think about it that much. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
No, I think in English speaking,
Okay.
it's kind of important point.
I mean, I've been speaking mostly German, and everything's capitalized in German.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think the world building is really great. The prose is good. It's written very well.
Ah, there's the but. I'm waiting for but. Waiting for
But
it.
I don't dislike the book, of course. And I think I think a lot of people would like the book. Definitely, and I would highly recommend the book to a lot of people. But going into it blind and the way it was sort of set up, I was expecting something else, actually, out of it. I think that's just from the background of what I kind of tend to read.
Yeah, exactly. This
Yeah.
is very different for anybody, I think.
Yeah, it dramatically turned into something else that it wasn't what I was expecting to be. I learned what a vestibule was. I didn't know what a
Takari.
vestibule was.
I don't know either.
And recently, I said I was reading like 1984, and he mentioned the word vestibule. I'm like, I know that word. I've heard it 500 times now. Thanks to Piranesi.
Yeah. All the vestibules and halls and
I
staircases.
wanted to start
yeah.
this podcast, but I didn't want to be too offensive. But I wanted to start this podcast with, on the 9th day of the 7th month, when the albatross came in the 17th vestibule, on the 2nd staircase of the 5th stair, when the tide came up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's written in that sort of journal style it's quite a bit old-fashioned, I guess. It's not written in that sort of first-person present kind of tense. as in this is what's going on, this is what's happened to me, kind of thing. So the writing style is a little bit not old-fashioned, but it's a bit sort of kind of like that sort of
Unusual.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it. Just the way the book ended, or the way the book sort of the direction it went for me. So
Yeah.
I think this book is very well constructed in the sense of, like, if you think of movies, you have like the found footage, like you pretend like it's a real thing. So this book is like you pretend like you have the real journal, and it's not like a narrative, it's like you found the journals. And in that sense, if you have the text, it can be skimmed through, it can be skipped, it can be referenced, and you can quickly jump back to find things you missed. And if you're into that kind of mystery building, almost like, what is it, ARG? Like the people look at all these games, like they look at clues and they self-reference things. So in that sense, it could be amazing because you can like conspiracy theory, imagine all kinds of explanations forever. So I think it's a very well written book, a very well constructed, like thought of book.
Like when I recommended it to people, and I think when I recommended it to you too, Philip, I kind of always preface it with, you have to stick out the first part. You just have to go through it because you will understand why he's like that. You will understand why the narration is so just completely strange, and why he's focusing on all the different halls and in the numbers of the halls and all the vestibules, the many vestibules and the statues. And actually, I think for me, I began reading it like with a friend remotely. We would like read a part and then we'd meet and we'd discuss it.
In that sense, it could be fun.
That was a lot of fun. That's a great mode that I would recommend to people. But
should have done Haunted that way.
the part when I like was like, okay, this is going to be good, was when he's talking about the statue of the satyr, and he's playing this instrument, and he is reminded of a winter landscape and a lantern and a little girl, and I was like, ooh, this is going to be connected with our world, and I want to know how. Yeah.
That kind of reminds me actually what you were saying, that I kind of have the opposite experience of what.
Yeah, me too. I like the best for the first part.
Yeah, I was so hooked at the first part. I was like, I'm really into this, and then I was just like, okay, I have to finish it. So, but it's really weird that most people went into it saying that the first part was the most difficult part to get through. Where
I see. That's
where I
interesting.
found it the most intriguing, these little breadcrumbs of something is going on in this world, and it's very. It was almost Lovecraftian for me. That's why I probably kind of dug it, and that's why I was expecting this sort of weird cosmic horror to develop, but didn't turn out that way. Yeah.
For me, I was in love with it in parts, and I hated some parts, and I was very taken in. Like, I was never bored, and I was always. It made me think about all sorts of stuff, and I really, really enjoyed going into it blind without knowing anything and not expecting anything. I was like trying to make myself open to this and not being like it's gonna be something or something. So I was just trying to enjoy it, and in that sense, I really liked it. Like, it's for the novelty of being like a different kind of book. I really like it.
Yeah, as I said, I do recommend it to people.
I can very quickly tell who will never read it, like some of my friends. And, I think this is something you'd really like, and it's very short. So that's another point. Even if I didn't like parts, it never overstayed its welcome. It's only 200 something pages. It flew by. So it was, even if it wasn't that enjoyable, you would never get stuck in like reading it, I think. So let's talk a bit about the writer. I tried to look up some stuff, and I looked up that she's a daughter of a Methodist minister, and I was like, what? What does that mean? And then I looked up that she was a teacher, and she taught in Italy and Spain, and then she edited cookbooks for 10 years. And then...
I was going to make a terrible joke about she should go back to that, but anyway.
You can hate the book, nobody is blaming you.
You can't
I don't
hate the book. Yeah,
I don't hate the book. No, not at all.
So she wrote a book, like a collection of stories, The Ladies of Grace Oria and Other Stories in 2006, and it was very successful. And then she wrote a very, very successful book called Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. People love this so hard. I don't understand. I've never heard of this, but online it's like the bomb. It's stupidly
It's
popular.
super
yeah.
popular. Yeah.
So it's an alternative history in France, some kind of war. I don't know. After this book, she had a long break. And this Piranesi book she wrote after it's almost 10 years or maybe 20 years. And she was like sick a little bit. She got like in a slump and she couldn't write. And I was reading about she was spending a lot of her time like at the seaside in like an abandoned house. Editing cookbooks from. So I was like, okay. So now she's doing better, I hope. Seems like this book is very popular too.
Yeah, I discovered there's a Japanese translation of it too. But it's quite expensive actually. It's like 2,600 yen or something.
Okay.
That's a really expensive book.
So I want to say I looked at all these awards. So very quick note, because in the previous episode we talked about like it won the Hugo Award, it won the Nebula Award, and Paul was like, what is that? What does that even mean? So I looked into it. So very quick note, I found that the Hugo Award is voted by fans. It's one of the longest awards. It's from 1953 until today. So every year, just fans, you can vote yourself. The Nebula Award is a only sci-fi and fantasy US award that has been chosen by the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America community. That's about 2,000 people. So those people choose. And then there is also the Women's Prize for Fiction that Piranesi won. And that's 11 women committee who each year choose a woman writer and they give the award to a writer, which Piranesi won. The Jonathan Strange and Mr. Novell won everything. That won Hugo Award, World Fantasy Award, Locus Award, Mythopoeic Award, British Book Awards. That's so much. But Piranesi won just the best women's prize for fiction. So just a quick note. Hopefully that answered some questions about all these awards. Do you care about these awards, Kristyna?
No, I don't care about the Booker Prize, the Hugo Award. Like, I just need to
Yeah,
like the
obviously.
book. That's all I don't go looking for
Yeah,
sci-fi.
yeah.
If like sometimes I like sci-fi, but I don't go looking for
I
it.
read exclusively sci-fi before this podcast, so I'm trying to change. So I wanted to ask you one last question before the spoilers, and that's we already talked about it. Do you recommend this to who? I think I recommend it to people who want something like people who read a lot of books. I think they will like this. It's different. Like it's like all these movie snobs who are bored with reviewing movies, and then they find the art house movie, and it's like this is the shit. I want to watch this, and then you watch it, and you're like. I don't know why you like it.
I think I would like it's a clever book, but it's not smug about it. That's what I enjoy. That it invites kind of theorizing and thinking about it and trying to solve the mystery, which you're not going to solve it. It's yeah, I don't think that's possible. But it is definitely something different. So if people are experienced readers, they will appreciate something different.
Yeah, I have a note here. I meant to say, like, what do you want from a book? So if you want something from a book, you will not like this. Like, okay, I like sci-fi.
Oh, you're smacking down your audience.
No, not at all. I mean it like I like sci-fi. So I want from a book, I want an idea, I want a sci-fi concept, I want a thrill, I want like a grand concept about the future, I want something to think about. And if it's not in there, like if there is not like an interesting sci-fi weapon, I'll be disappointed. So that's what I mean by I want something from a book, because that's dumb. So you can't do it with this book. That's what I'm saying. Like if you want action from the book, or if you want thrill, or if you want love story, that's
like,
not this book.
No, it's not actiony. There's no romance. There's just but I wouldn't say that nothing happens in the book. I think a lot of things happen in the book, but
and you open to enjoying something without having any requirements for it or something like that, or like any like expectations that has to be fulfilled for you to say it's a good book. If you don't do these things, I would say definitely read this. That's what I want to say.
I think it's a general audience kind of book, actually. It feels to me like something I would read in school and enjoy. And then something I could recommend to like my mother or something, and she would enjoy it too. I think it's quite a broad spectrum of audience.
Might be talking out of my ass.
It's very accessible. No, I think people can get different things out of it. My issue with it was I was expecting it to go somewhere else, which it didn't.
Okay, so much more positive. You should have been this positive about the previous book. Damn it!
This is shit.
Damn it! My childhood memories have been destroyed by Paul.
Oh, he dissed your favorite book?
So
Did he?
hard. I was like breaking my heart.
At least you got to read like teenage, like childhood books. I got to read like messed up stuff when I was a kid.
So, last thing I want to say about this book, before we get into spoilers, if you still don't know if you want to read this, I'd say this is a book that would exist if the director, M. Night Shyamalan, became a hermit and a librarian and then wrote a book. That's what I was saying.
I don't think you're selling it. I don't
Yeah.
think you're selling it.
Yeah, but I feel like this was an M. Night Shyamalan movie, like in the end. So, because this book is so unusual and we would like to promote this podcast, if you leave us a review and we get at least 10 reviews on the major podcasting platforms, that iTunes, Apple Podcasts, so we'll choose the best review and you'll win a free audiobook, which doesn't make any sense now that I think about it because we just said the audiobook is worse than the text. But anyway.
The audiobook is great. It's still good. I just said I miss points about the capitalization. That's all. But I think the audiobook, the narration is fantastic.
It's read very well on the audiobook. So
It's
if you
really
leave a review and
Yes.
we get at least 10 reviews, that's not a very ambitious goal. We'll choose the best review and we'll send you a free audiobook. So please, I spent some money on advertising and we were talking about it and I was like, that's a very good point. We want to spend money on you, listener, than advertising. So, so we'll buy you a book if you want to, if you're intrigued.
You're the cool podcast. You reward your listeners. That's very nice.
First time in the Bahamas. If you're
In the Bahamas.
even better.
Yeah, the Bahamas people love us. Where that list is so weird. There's like about 5 or 6 books that are just like smutty, dirty, romantic books. And then there's us, and then there's like a religious
weird. Yeah, I don't know
book
who that
readings as well. We're like this weird
So
sandwich.
you should read some really dirty, smutty books, and that'll just bump
I
you
did
up.
last time.
We shall do them. We shall do them in the future on this podcast.
What was that stupid one that was super
Twilight?
popular? They made it into a movie. No, not worse than Twilight.
50
yes,
Shades?
Yeah.
I've been to a live reading of it.
Do you want to try to read it, Philip? We can do a review of it. Let's do.
Actually, like for I think the algorithm will like it more if you read the Polish one, because there's a book or a series that's inspired by 50 Shades, and it's got a movie made out of it. It's out on Netflix. By all accounts, it's quite horrific and much worse than 50 Shades. It's called 365 Days. So if you want to torture
heard of this.
yourself, that sounds like, torture yourself for the algorithm. That sounds
Are you
like
going to do that with us? Are you on this episode? Is the question.
Sure.
I guess let's go into spoilers. So if you want to read this, which we recommend, don't listen. Hit the pause button, stop button, whatever you do, and come back after you've read it. Not long, so save this part for later. But we'll still try to do our best to give you the recap and what happened. We usually fail at, but I'll do my best to tell you what happened. So you can get something out of this even if you haven't read this. So the story is like a diary entry list of... So it's a list of diary entries. And the narrator, from the very beginning, is very strange. From the very start, I was very intrigued and curious. Is this narrator reliable? I think he is. What do you think?
I agree.
Like, does he lie? Or does he say things that are not true?
No, but he doesn't have all the information.
So that's a good point, yes.
That would make him like a less than reliable narrator. He doesn't lie on purpose, but he just doesn't know everything, and so he kind of ascribes meaning to things that maybe don't have a meaning, and perceives things as different than what they really are.
Yeah, so he starts with the description of the world and the people in the world, which I really liked. So he says he lives in this house, and there are only 15 people in this world, and he is the first one. And there is the other. There are 13 other people who are skeletons. Was very much in. And then he says, and you, my dear reader, are the 16th person. And I was like, yes, Mr. Robot reference, yes.
Don't talk about Mo.
So this is a point I was like, yes, this is gonna be something. It's gonna be the reader's gonna be part of the story, and it's gonna be a character in the story. Oh my god! And none of that. No.
Yeah.
Have to calm
But
down.
I think that's a good for me. It's a good thing that. Yeah.
No, I would agree with
Okay.
that point too.
Okay.
Uh,
So I meant to say he calls himself. I tried to look it up, but I failed. Like I remember he had a word for it in the book, like an amnesia scientist, logist, something. Like he said he is a person who describes himself as a not librarian, but like a historian who makes sure that things are not forgotten, and he fights forgetfulness, and he tries to log everything that happens so it's not forgotten, and he put like a word on it. It's not important. I just wanted to check if you remember.
I did not notice that, and
It was like amnesiologist or something. I was like amused.
and that's ironic, isn't it?
So I thought it was a very, very, very good start because it was a very good setup, and I really liked the theme of like forgetting things and him being the person who makes you we don't forget things, but obviously he's already forgotten a bunch. So I like that part a lot. So he marks these diary entries with a calendar date, but he doesn't know any calendar dates. So he makes up his own calendar dates based on an event that happened in the house, which was an albatross coming in the house and then setting up a nest. And every entry starts with like the 7th day of the first month, the albatross came in the 7th vestibule or something like that, which I have to say was very annoying after having listened to a bunch of this on the audiobook, but very easy to skip if you are reading this. So
Yes.
yeah. It does get tedious very quickly.
So, but there's nothing to do about it if you're doing the audiobook. So, yeah, it's not that bad. It's okay. So then we get the part where there is the other. So that's another person in this world, in this house, and they have meetings and they have like strange conversations and.
They have meetings every Tuesday, or was it Thursday? But I think it was Tuesday. That is specifically in the text. We meet every Tuesday. Yeah, but it was like a real day.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, sorry. It's like,
Yeah. So yeah,
Okay.
the 7th day the albatross arrived wherever.
So he knows
but
Tuesdays.
They meet on
So
Tuesday.
the other knows stuff, and he has things that we know. So already there is like a hint that the main character called Piranesi, he doesn't know the real world, but this other, he knows the real world, and maybe he can reach it somehow.
So he thinks
Maybe.
the other is
Yes.
just from another part of the house or another section of the house. So we shouldn't probably say world because he just thinks he's from another. Go back to your area of the room or part of the another vestibule or whatever.
Yeah. But after a while, the reader probably will notice that, he always says, and he was wearing a very nice suit.
Yes.
And the color of the suit was whatever, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the narrator thinks he's just going back to another section of the
that's
house.
true.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make. That it's clear to the reader that this guy is not from this world. He's from our world. But for Piranesi, he's from another part of the room. So I say it correctly. Come on, guys.
You do. That's what we appreciate. Only professionalism on this podcast. So they have these meetings and they keep talking about things that are very, not strange, but very intriguing. And sometimes the other has like a test for the main character.
He's like
Yeah, but
probably needed memory kind of thing. Yeah.
They have a very strange relationship. The other is like working on something constantly, and he says he's pursuing the knowledge, which I didn't until the end. I don't know what it is. Is that something?
They did explain it, or I think he says that the knowledge is supposed to be something that will give you power to like control lesser men and
okay. I forgot
yeah,
that part.
maybe talk to animals or whatever, just
I see.
some kind of mystic shit.
Basically, yeah.
I was looking for a different word, but then I didn't find it.
Yeah, so he does have like a wish list of like 5 or 6 things he wants to be able to do. That was one of them, yes.
So I'm gonna skip like a bunch forward. Is there something at this point we should mention in the plot? Is there anything important we should say before we like move?
The house is very important. The setting of the novel is very important, and the tides are very important. There's like constantly, when is the tide coming? The way Piranesi lives in the world, he's very connected to the house and to the surroundings with all the birds. That's why he keeps going on about the albatross so much, because he really cares about the place where he is.
Yeah, and he tracks the tides like meticulously. He knows when the tides are coming into the house and flooding certain rooms, and when certain rooms will be flooded, or things like this.
Yeah.
The other is sort of a bit more nervous about it. He doesn't kind of know about the tidal patterns, and when they're having certain meetings as well, the other sometimes gets a bit nervous about, he can hear the waves crashing and stuff like this, and he's like asking, is this safe now? Things like this. So that's kind of
the other seems to me more reasonable, more civilized, whereas the main character Piranesi is more accustomed to survival in this place, which is, in his perspective, very hostile and difficult to survive in. He gets seaweed and he tries to get food and he tries to be warm and he doesn't have enough clothes. And when the other is pitying him, he gives him like new shoes, and that's a big deal for Piranesi.
But Piranesi also says that, you know, the house provides. The house gives.
Yeah.
Maybe I like this book more than I thought. Jesus Christ, Philip. I'm talking myself.
He has a very spiritual relationship with the house.
I agree.
Yes.
The more I think about it, the more I like it.
Is it kind of like if Robinson Crusoe kind of forgot where he came from after, like, I don't know, 15 years on the island? He just completely forgot who he was before, and that's the vibe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because he questions the other, like, why does the other always have like these items and things like this, where the house always provides things that I need
It was
to
at this point
sustain my life? Yeah,
exactly.
The shining instruments.
Very, very interesting. Like, I was all in at this point. Very much loving this book.
Yes, me too.
I'm curious
Yes.
where we gonna, like, if we gonna agree with Paul, where we like.
I think we kind of veer off the same path. I think. Maybe.
So one more thing, since we're talking about the setting, I really like the description of the statues. So there are different statues in the house, and they depict different people in different positions, doing different things. Also, there are many birds, and the main character keeps talking to the birds, and he keeps talking to the statues, and he keeps like thinking, like personalizing the statues, and having like a real relationship with the statues. My favorite was the gorilla statue. I wrote a bunch of notes here. so the first time he mentioned the gorilla, he was like, this hall contains the statue of the gorilla, and I thought the sight of him would lend me strength. And then blah blah. And then he comes back to the statue again, and he says, may his strength give me resolution and give me courage. I shall sit in front of the gorilla statue and ponder about my resilience. And when I stare at it long enough, it will give me strength. And then at the end of the book, he comes back for a bit and he hugs the gorilla statue. And he's so happy that he's seen the gorilla statue again. So I thought that was very amusing.
Yeah. He kind of uses the statues for divination, right? To kind of, he asks a question and then he looks around and the statue will appear in some light to him, and then he'll say, oh, that's what I have to do. I shouldn't have worried. The house always gives me the answer because the lady with the beehive.
Yeah, it was really good, really interesting, and very quirky, like funny to me. It's the same with the albatross, how he was trying to help it set up the nest, and how he was like talking to the birds and all this. It felt almost like Monty Python or something in parts to me.
But you just saw me before with my cat, and I'm like chatting to my cat. He doesn't fucking understand a word I'm saying, but I think I have a communication with him, and I think, you know, it's highlighted at the end as well that, yeah, you know, humans, we chat to animals who, you know, we cannot communicate with, but we think we have some kind of connection with. I'm starting to think maybe I should go back and read this book.
Have you reread this, Kristyna?
No, I haven't.
That's okay. I'm just checking if it's like better even maybe. Or so the plot thickens and we learn there are other people, of course, and there are suggestions about people coming in and out of the house, or people appearing in the house, or maybe they live in a far place in the house we haven't been to yet. It seems like a large place. Like the other has never been in these parts, but Piranesi keeps exploring the house. And then we learn there is this character called 16, and they might be dangerous. And there is also there's another character, the Prophet, he calls him. So before the 16, the Prophet appears, which is like an old guy who comes in the house, and it seems from the conversation that he's very amused.
just this old posh bastard who
And he's trying to
looks
make
down
fun
on
of
him.
him, and
And-
he tells him that
Yeah.
people have been able to transform into birds and travel long distances or something. And I was like, is this like a thing that's gonna be a crazy plot point, or is this just him making fun of the main character? So he's just making fun of him. You don't remember this part?
No, I don't know. I know he was. I was kind of theorizing. So who is Piranesi in reality? And I got really focused on how he talks about, like the different people the prophet mentions. Among them, that dishy Italian, and I thought, is Piranesi that dishy Italian? And well, I
Yeah.
suppose we can say he's not, since we're in the spoiler part. But
So it was
yeah.
really interesting, and at the time we'll talk about later what we thought the house was and what were our theories and stuff. But at this point, I was kind of hoping that the mention of the birds transforming into people would be a real thing later. So I was like, is this book going to be that crazy? Probably not, but it might be. I don't know. But anyway, the prophet leaves, and the main character has a bunch of ideas about all kinds of things. I think at this point they also talk about the ideas flowing between worlds. I think this is my favorite part of the whole book. They say that different worlds have different kind of knowledge and different kind of information, and when people forget or die or the world disappears, it opens a door to a new world, and there is like a connection, like a door opens for a short time where the information can flow from one world to the other. Yeah, so I this whole discussion was probably my favorite like theme.
Where he was talking about where energy or information goes or something like that. They gave a metaphor about like water or something like that flowing into the land or something. Was
Yes,
that
yes,
the
yes,
part
yes.
you're referring to? Yes. Okay. So some of it gets evaporated, some of it plants will absorb.
Exactly.
Where
They
does the
can
rest
come back
go,
to this
kind of
idea
thing?
in a few points. So this is also that, yes. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. And then we get to like the finale, I guess. So the other is not happy that Piranesi has been in contact with. He doesn't know, but he is suspicious what Piranesi has been doing, and he doesn't want him to get in contact with other people. And he tells him that if he ever gets in contact with 16, he might go mad, and it's very dangerous, and people might kill each other. Then we even find out that he's got a gun, the other has a gun, and he's getting ready to murder 16. Yeah, so he just gets more tense. Doesn't, yeah.
I really enjoyed that part where he's very kind of cold-blooded about it, and it's obvious that he does not consider Piranesi to be like a human anymore, because he goes, well, if you talk to 16, that's going to be really dangerous. It would actually make you go crazy. And Piranesi is like, okay, and what would happen? Well, I'd have to kill you. It's for your own good. And you can, like, Piranesi is going, well, yeah. I don't think that would be necessary, actually. I wouldn't want that to happen. I don't think you would need to kill me, but,
Yeah.
that
Exactly.
discussion was kind of chilling.
So I have not on purpose skipped the part that I didn't like. I think before this happens, we get the backstory about the occultist and so that part I was kind of zoning out. It's interesting, but I'm like, yeah. So we get like a section, like the middle of the book, I think, where he learns that some of the entries in his diary might be wrong. Somebody has changed them. Some of them have disappeared. Some of them have been renumbered. And he keeps rereading things, and he finds more information about like the backstory about how this all happened, who is who, all these other characters. And I have to say, it didn't really give me enough to be like into it. And at the same time, I don't know. Somehow I was just like, it was.
So he pieces together bits of like from the bird's nest or something, like scraps of paper to find out the diary entries that he was planning to write a book.
Yes.
About the occultist, and the occultist other has basically sent him to this world.
Yes. So his name is Lawrence Arns Sales. And,
Yes.
So this part I was kind of confused why it wasn't interesting to me, because it was trying to explain the backstory. I don't know. It was just somehow.
It kind of gave some information. I enjoyed like meeting the characters and trying to figure out which of them is which
Okay.
dead person in the house, because I figured that
Yeah,
would
yeah.
be relevant.
Me neither.
I don't think
Yeah,
I
was just about
figured
to say.
any of
There's
it.
one
Kind of
guy
was
that
too.
was kidnapped or something, John Ritter or something.
Yeah.
James, sorry.
James
Yeah.
Ritter. Poor James Ritter.
He pops up again later. This is a part of the story where my ears kind of pricked up. I thought, oh, are we going to go into this sort of occultist world and things like this? Because, I'm kind of into Lovecraft and all that kind of crap. But it turned into like a detective story.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean now.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like a missing person story. So that's where I kind of lost interest. It's like, oh, okay. I was expecting it to go somewhere else. So
I see what you mean now. Yeah, that's understandable.
So I was waiting for all this like rich history about the occultist and them trying to bring up something otherworldly or something like this, but it just didn't happen. Yeah.
I was kind of sure now that would happen because the book was too short.
Yeah, but I mean, Lovecraft would do it in a few paragraphs. So anyway,
That's true.
but anyway.
Yeah, that might be it. I really enjoy detective stories, so that's perhaps the different kind
Okay.
of viewpoints we're coming at this book from.
I think I just grew up reading too many, so it's sort of it's not kind of my thing
I
anymore.
haven't
I
read
guess.
any,
So,
I don't
anyway,
think, like ever. Oh my god!
read Silence of the Lambs. That's a good
Like,
detective
I don't
story.
think I've genuinely ever read a detective story. Like
Okay.
I've read like a short story from Arthur Conan Doyle or something, but I haven't read the book.
Okay.
So 16 appears in the
Okay.
house, and Piranesi overhears them, and he finds out it's a woman, and the other is talking to her, and he knows her name, and she knows his name. So his name is Ketterley, her name is Raphael, and so Piranesi is very confused and scared about this, and he keeps thinking about how it would make him mad if he learned something from 16. Then 16 leaves a message, and he just blindfolds himself and erases the message so he won't go mad.
But not all of it. He erases
Which
some
was
of it, doesn't
very-
he? Yeah. He leaves traces
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah. Yes.
And, then 16 leaves another message, and the whole message is, "Are you?" I don't know the name.
Matthew Rose Sorensen.
So, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm mad now," and then, and he imagines himself standing in a modern city, and he like a bunch of old memories flow into his mind. Things kind of start to break apart, but he still wants to hold his own in this house, and he still thinks he cannot think of himself as being somebody else, meaning this person's name I will never remember.
Yeah.
Matthew Rose. Matthew Rose Sorensen.
Yeah. I enjoyed the switch in the style of writing when he is like in the flashback as Matthew Rose Sorensen.
Yeah.
He's a normal dude. He's a normal guy. And then after Catterley kind of does that to him, he just sends him off into this strange different world. He changes. Yeah, and I thought that his reaction to finding it out was very, very powerful. Just how angry he was, and that kind of, how before he was like, well, maybe we don't actually need to murder people, and now he's like, yep, I'm gonna fucking murder that guy.
Yeah, the ending I enjoyed very much, and the beginning it was just like lost me a bit in the middle. But so then we get the final confrontation. There is a tide coming, a big tide. He keeps logging all of them, and he knows which of them are dangerous, and he knows that if he stays in certain parts of the house and the tides come, it would kill him. So he keeps warning the other, and the other keeps warning him about 16, and he keeps telling him that he will kill him if he gets in contact with 16 and all this. And then Raphael, aka 16, and the other and Piranesi meet. The tide's coming in. The other starts shooting them. They escape a little bit upwards, so the water doesn't get them. They keep shouting at him to save himself, but he's just too obsessed with killing them. So he doesn't get into his boat, and he dies by being smushed, crushed against the wall with the tide.
It's kind of interesting too. When I was reading it or listening to it, he had such rage, like he wanted to kill this guy. And then when the guy's getting smashed around the waves and like drowning, he was trying to save his life. And it's just really conflicting kind of emotions. I just wondering about that.
He was his only friend for so long.
Fair enough. Yeah.
That was one thing that just kind of broke my heart a little. How eager he was for companionship. And when later he's talking to Raphael, so are there more than like 20 or 30 people in the world? And she laughs because like, yeah. And he just cannot believe it. He thinks it's the most wonderful thing ever. And yeah,
Me too.
I
me too.
liked
I
that.
think the conflicting part made sense to me, like Kristyna said, that he has never known anybody else. So even though he's being killed by him now, he still feels something for him.
Maybe it's just me. I hold on to grudges forever. I can't let go. No matter if I've been sent to another dimension.
I
I'm like,
see how it is.
I want to fucking kill this person. Anyway,
Okay.
I was just like, yeah, I was just wondering about that. But then again, he doesn't. He wants companionship, but he doesn't really want to
Yeah,
come
that's
back
the
to.
main theme. Like I was thinking about the whole thing, whole way throughout the book, that we all have sort of a space we want to be in. Like we have a comfort zone, like his life and all he knows and all he ever experienced is the house and him living there. And it's so scary to get out of that. In that sense, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But the detective. Well, this is my complaint about the story as well. The genre kind of switches for me, where it becomes more of a detective story, and the police officer who finds him and somehow gets to this other dimension and rescues him, and she's like, "Oh, it's really peaceful
Yeah,
here.
I like that part.
It's quite nice." I was like, "You really hate it that much back in the other place? Then fucking maybe you should move or change your career or something."
No, that's
I
the
don't
part I
know,
like
it's
because
just
they
like,
keep talking about like the ideas flowing into another worlds and then things evaporating and disappearing. And I think everybody does this with their own life. Like everybody gets stuck in a place, and
I know,
everybody
I
wants
know.
to be comforted in that way. And she found the comfort by escaping to a new place where no worries and problems were, and all these like disruptions and
Yeah.
distractions. And so yeah,
But I was just expecting some horrible demons or something to be summoned when he was trying to do the magic. That's all I wanted.
I'm not gonna lie, I was hoping for that too.
It just turned into something completely unexpected. That's what.
There was that misdirect, right?
Yeah.
Where he goes into that temple or whatever and he's watching those stars and then you think,
Yeah.
yeah, but then it just that
You
went
might
nowhere.
guess what I was thinking about at that point.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. This is gonna get dark, and maybe I'm gonna really dig it. And it just turned
I was
into
thinking
something
I
else.
was the whole time I was thinking about what's gonna be this like plot twist or whatever ending, and I was so excited, and at the same time I was trying not to be excited, and then I was like, it's gonna turn into something.
Yeah.
It could turn into this, it could turn into this, and I think it turning into a detective story is a pretty good thing. Like it could be worse.
Well, I think for most readers, I think it's a great thing. I think most people really dig it. I think it's just for me. It's like I'm expecting something like cosmic horror.
I think it
Yeah.
makes it more like acceptable. It makes
Yeah.
it less trash.
Yeah. I like trash.
Me too.
All
We
the
both
crap
want.
we read.
Yeah.
It's more of an understated kind of a story.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
makes
Not
it a
very
little
in
bit
your
more
face with-
respectable because there are no aliens. Because when I was looking at the stars, I was like, yes, aliens.
Submarine something.
And then I
Yes.
was like, demons. And then I was like,
Yes.
occultists, brother.
Yeah.
Insects are going to come, and Piranesi is going to put on his armor,
Yes.
and he's going to change into a super
Exactly.
trooper.
That would be perfect.
So
but it
this is
wasn't
not that kind of thing, and I think that serves it well. So I think
It does. Yes.
Yeah, I think this is why. So I like it. Like I'm not disappointed with it. Trying to say, like
Yeah, I think I've just come with different expectations of the stuff I usually read. So, as I said, for a general reader or the mass market, I think it's kind of perfect.
so we already talking about the theories. So before we say like the ending, I was convinced that it would be only in his mind, and I was almost kind of convinced that the other was himself talking to himself. I was about to be disappointed because I was expecting him to wake up somewhere and being like.
That's high school English, man.
Having,
You
no,
don't do
not
that.
just waking up. I mean, waking up somewhere or realizing something and realizing that he's got split personality or he's like overhearing something from the other door being in the hospital or some nonsense. Like I was expecting to be like a sensory problem. Like he wouldn't be able to hear and see and he wouldn't like well enough or he's blind or he's deaf or I was expecting something like that. And that's what made him a kind of mad and he wasn't able to perceive the world where he was. And the characters in the world were like real people but distorted by his inability to perceive correctly. That was my expectation.
I would have hated that.
Yeah, me too.
I would have hated
Yeah.
that so much.
I mean, like throw the book in the corner. It's like
That's exactly why I was about to be disappointed. I was like, if it's gonna be that, because I thought like the statues I thought were people and he wasn't able to like communicate with them. And I thought
it's so
like,
cheap.
yes, exactly. And I was like, I hope it's not this, so it's not. And yes,
Wow.
that was my cheap theory. So how about you guys? What did you think?
Okay, before I figured out the scale of the house, I thought it's like
I
post-apocalyptic.
also thought about that.
And they're in some kind of an American mall kind of a thing. But then I figured, no, there's like, where would the statues have come from? And then I thought, oh, I am a genius. I have solved it. It is the Atlantis, the lost city of Atlantis. And I was so pleased with myself. Then, yeah, it's not the lost city of Atlantis. It's just a different world. But yeah.
I came out with at the beginning the same thing, that this is like a post-apocalyptic kind of world, and then I guess just my Lovecraft instinct switched on and said, "Oh, this is another dimension." That's it. Okay, I accept that. That's fine.
Yeah, the post-apocalypse I thought also of, but I thought it definitely wouldn't be it. So then I was
Well,
like...
it's just because he's like, at the beginning, he's like, there's only 15 people in this world. I was like, oh, okay, everyone's wiped out.
Yeah, that's what...
Okay,
yes,
something's
yes.
happened. So
Yes,
I was like,
exactly,
okay.
exactly.
But then it started getting a bit weird, and I was like, ooh, I'm intrigued now. And then it becomes a detective story.
I think my friend and I also considered time travel for a while. Like you mentioned, like the other is actually Piranesi from the future or something.
Okay.
But yeah, that was for a very short period before we kind of started to sense that the other is in fact evil.
Yeah, and when he starts mentioning about like Piranesi losing time, like you lose time and you don't understand what day it is sometimes. Yeah, that could be a concept as well.
I think I also read it quite quickly, so if I spent more time thinking about what it meant, I would have enjoyed it more. Just trying to like finish it before Paul.
I have more time than you, so.
But so we get to the ending, and 16 talks to Piranesi, or Raphael talks to Piranesi, and she tells him that she could take him home, and there is this real family waiting for him, and he's been missing for a while, and she is a detective, and she's trying to solve this case where people are disappearing, and people are being kidnapped, and Catterley was a student of an occultist, that was the
Lawrence
other guy's name.
something.
Yes, Lawrence Arnsales. So Lawrence Arnsales was like an occultist doing experiments to access a different world, and Catterley was his student. And then Catterley kidnapped somebody.
I think the Dishy
I don't
Italian,
know.
no?
Maybe.
I thought it was the other guy.
I have here
Ritter,
James Ritter, but I don't...
know who was first.
And yeah, it doesn't matter. So he kidnapped somebody, and then he also kidnapped Piranesi.
Piranesi wanted to write a book.
So the reason Piranesi went there
To
was
interview
write a book,
him, yes, sales, yes.
To interview him, yes. So he was like writing to investigate.
And he's very
this
skeptical about the
case.
whole situation, yes. No.
And he doesn't believe it, exactly. Until he is taken into the world and we get the moment where the ritual is performed and he forgets and
Yes.
gets placed
The
into the
sales
house.
is just laughing at him,
Yeah.
like,
So-
saying, haha, you're here now. So, yeah.
But that wasn't Sales.
Oh, sorry, I
It was
mixed him up.
Catterley.
That was Ketterly. Like Sales, he messed around with it for a bit, and he kidnapped poor James the Ritter and committed some murders, and then he kind of put it behind him and focused on a different kind of study. But Ketterly was stuck trying to understand, get the knowledge, be able to control the lesser men, and I think and it was Ketterly who did who agreed to an interview, and after Rose Sorensen kind of laughed at him for being dumb and believing that he can get into a different world, then he's like, yep, and sends him off to the house.
Yep.
I can cut out my stupidity.
This was- No, you
I
can.
will.
Well, you can, but you don't have to. I will. Maybe I will edit this one. So we have this sentimental conversation between Raphael and Piranesi where she wants to rescue him and take him back to his family, but Piranesi doesn't know who he really is. He still cannot process that he is this other person, and he wants to stay there. And I was surprised that Raphael led him.
Yeah, this part pissed me off, actually.
Why?
Yeah.
Because if I was a police officer, I'd be like, no, look, I fucking
Yeah,
came
so
here.
that surprised
You're
me.
fucking coming with me. Let's fucking go.
She said she could come back anytime, so that answered it for me. Like I was like, okay, she knows where this is, and she can
But,
get here.
I mean, if you're a police officer, you've done all this work to find someone.
Yes, it was
And
strange.
I've
I was
solved
surprised.
the case. You're fucking coming back. I'm bringing
Exactly,
you
I
back.
was, like, expecting-
This is not about you, but it's also about me and my
I
job.
was surprised she was so compassionate because she saw him what he is.
I couldn't really get past this part.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I was hoping that, or I kind of understood that she wouldn't make him because for like his the choice was taken from him by when he was kidnapped and kept forcibly in that world. Presumably he wasn't very happy when he got there at first. We never see him arriving in the world and how he dealt with that. But then he gets a choice. It's his life. She respects him enough to be like, you want to live here? Okay, here's the consequences. Because, yeah, I think it's not like her biggest career move. I don't think anybody knows where she is. So it's not like she's losing anything. Yeah.
But it is very weird, like considering who she is and what her job is. She would never leave the suspect there. Like her whole point to get there and being endangered and going through all this is to get him. So I was expecting her to cuff him and drag him out.
I think she just wanted to find where he was, and when she realizes that actually he's okay, he's not in danger.
I'm about to be cancelled again, but I'm gonna say it. It's because a woman wrote it.
Probably. We do like choices. We do like to have a choice.
Men are like, hey, I've done the fucking work. You're coming with me.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's how a man thinks. A woman thinks, oh, poor guy, and we should be considerate. And like, I get it. It was the right choice. It was very much the right choice for her to leave him there and get him out later. But it would be a choice that a psychologist would have made, not a
Maybe.
policewoman.
Yeah.
I think.
Maybe that was not realistic. I don't know. But I liked that choice in the narrative that he wasn't dragged forcibly. Like he would have gone crazy. He was already kind of.
That's true, and that's another point why she did it. So okay, I don't mind it. Like I get it. I was surprised by it. I wasn't annoyed.
I was
by
annoyed
it.
by it.
No, okay, fair
Kind
enough.
of seeing that I'm not the only one thinking the same thing as Philip said. Yeah.
So we get like an epilogue where he gets back to the family and he keeps talking to all kinds of people. I'm a little bit hazy on this part. What happens exactly? The family accepts him back, but he is still not himself and like the original person, and he still has this divide, and he keeps looking at objects that remind him of his previous life, but it still seems very foreign and removed from his current perception of reality or the life he is in. So he tries to like accept living in like this guy's shoes, but he's never feeling like he is him.
Yeah, he keeps referring to him in like a third person kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, which is a interesting setup for a sequel. I almost thought.
No,
Like,
I
do you think there's gonna be a
hope
sequel?
not. That would ruin everything. I think the story is finished.
Okay, yes, but I feel like she's gonna write a sequel, but I don't know.
No, I hope not. I think it wouldn't. Like, what would that
Okay.
even be about?
Well, the cult and other people getting in and out of worlds, and this guy being like in between it and not really the guy and being the guy, and I can see a bunch of stuff where this could go,
That
and it would be
suck
Schlock.
so
I would
bad.
read it. I would love it.
I can see so many ways. Like if this was a successful movie, 7 sequels.
Oh, absolutely. Like Disney would squeeze the last dollar from this, but I
I
don't.
meant to say it lends itself to many interpretations for a sequel.
Yeah,
That's what I
definitely.
meant. Like,
Yeah.
So it ends with him talking to the policewoman again and going back in the place together, and that's where he hugs the gorilla statue, I think.
They visit there. I think I like that. I like that aspect, and then he goes. We kind of talked over poor James Ritter. Poor James Ritter was a guy that Lawrence Arnsales kidnapped, and he kept him in the house for a while. I think until James Ritter got more crazy, and then he like kept him in his own home, and that's how the police found out that something fishy is going on with the Arn sales guy, because he's kidnapping young guys and keeping them in his house forcibly. And then James Ritter is working in like an antique museum or around the statues, and when the narrator, because at that point he's not referring to himself as Piranesi or Rose Sorensen, gets back, he meets with him, and he kind of promises that if he ever goes back to the house to stay there forever, he's going to take him with him, because apparently there's something about the house that makes people love it and makes people want to be there.
So he makes a point to Raphael, who feels very comforted and wants to stay there, that's not okay. Get out. And then the book ends.
Yeah.
So we should mention the Piranesi word. I didn't know it was an artist, Italian artist, and he made paintings or pictures of imaginary houses. We've all seen these pictures. It's the place where the stairs are on the ceiling and the rooms go into other rooms, and there are like paradoxical things going in and out of each other. So that's this guy. His 18th century Italian artist Giovanni Battista Piranesi.
Cool. I googled the pictures and I should have done that before. I just didn't bother. And yeah, I know why Cattoli called Rose Sorensen Piranesi. Like,
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
what a
And
nasty, horrible little man. I hate him even more now.
okay.
I remember one thing that I wanted to like ask you about all that, like, because we are saying that Lawrence Arnstyle sales styles was an occultist, but actually he and all of his like cult, they were studying mathematics. And I thought that was interesting, that like, is there some kind of a pipeline mathematician to thinking that other worlds are possible and kidnapping people there?
That's Dreams in the Witch House, isn't it, Philip? Isn't it? Yeah. This is very old kind of sort of stuff where like Lovecraft would explore kind of mathematical
Very
scientists
similar
exploring
ideas.
kind of occultist kind of things. So it's not a new concept. I think it's just that kind of weird hybrid.
Please check out episode 3.
Episode
For
3.
Dreams in the
Okay,
Witch House.
episode 23 and episode 3.
Of course, all of the episodes, but this one is number 3. Don't do Haunted.
Oh, it's my best performance. And you know, Brown Jenkins was one of the best characters we've ever had.
Yeah, episode 3 was pretty fun. It's a very easy read. I have to say, after just having talked about it, made me like it so much more. So I like it much more than I thought before we
too.
started talking about this. Like even before I prepared this, when I was preparing for this, I wrote down all the stuff and I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. Yeah, this actually makes sense. Yeah, and I was like, okay. So yes, it's a great book.
We're gonna give away the audio book for this one.
Yeah, so please leave a review. On Apple Podcasts, preferably, or iTunes.
So
Say that again.
Spotify audio, not Google. I'm fucking this up.
Maybe Kristyna should say it because we keep failing.
Absolutely, you should all leave a review. Everybody that I've recommended this podcast to, because I know I have sent you a link. Once you get to this point, stop and go and leave a review, because maybe they will do that horrible Polish weird porn thing. But
That would be awesome.
after, if you do, and that should be fun.
We should do that.
Yeah, it sounds fun. I will do it. So please leave reviews. We'll choose the best one and you'll win an audiobook. We'll get in touch somehow. So also, after having left the review, if you're interested in getting this book, send us an email at mindduckbooks@gmail.com.
Yeah.
That's the easiest. So thanks a lot for listening. Leave the review. And maybe you're welcome back, Kristyna, of course. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. Thanks so much for recommending this. I appreciate it.
It's been fun. Thanks for having me.
See you on the next episode.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Leave us a review or rate us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or Audible. Don't pass on a chance to win a book. And on the next episode, we are discussing Red Rising by Pierce Brown. To very crudely sum it up, Irish drunkards in space.